This is a discussion with Kevin Bates, the creator of the Arduboy and an amazing open source community. Kevin is an inventor, innovator, and passionate about furthering the global STEM education movement through the creation of video games. This is Pioneers in Open Source. Kevin, on the heels of your latest Kickstarter, which I really want to dive into, you've been a force when it comes to the world of open source. I want you to explain to everyone exactly what the Arduboy is.
Well, the Arduboy, which I happen to have here, is a open source 8-bit console. It's designed so that it's Arduino compatible, and so you can learn to make and create your own games. And it's got a library of over 300 games that are available on the community, and you can talk to the developers there, and it's a great place to learn how to code.
And the Arduboy itself has been something that I've personally fallen in love with. When I saw the Kickstarter just the other day, I was chomping at the bit. I told my wife, we have to stop talking right now. I need to go make sure I pre-order this thing. From the Arduboy FX, which I have, to the original Arduboy. I think I missed Gen 1. I felt that as soon as I started working on this machine, a sense of joy. And I imagine you've heard similar from the community. What is it like to be a part of a community that has been thriving for so long?
Well, it's just tremendously rewarding overall. It started as a project for something that, I was passionate about. And when I shared it online, to find out that there were hundreds, thousands of other people who were as passionate or even more passionate than I am about this kind of thing, it just kind of blew me away. It gives me a tremendous sense of pride and fuels my motivation to really keep continuing doing what I'm doing.
I was first introduced into the Arduboy circa 2017. But I do remember the Kickstarter for the original Arduboy. But I do want to kind of share with you how we were introduced corporate-wise. We had a gentleman by the name of Simon who worked with us, and my business partner at that point had charged myself and a couple of others in the R&D group to work on something special from a holiday gift perspective. And we looked at the entire landscape of what's available, and Simon had suggested that the Arduboy itself would be the thing. And I remember opening it up and we got a few copies. We spread them around to some of the developers we have around the world. And I just felt, I don't know, like magic when I first did the Hello World example. And for you to have started this from the ground up, I think is pretty awesome. So can you walk us back to like the very early stages of Arduboy? Because from what I understand, it's actually an interesting tale.
Yeah, it's an extremely long story, but I'll give you the short version. Basically, what had happened was, as I was messing around with the Arduino, when I was working at a company actually climbing windmills, wind turbines. So I had a job where I was a wind turbine technician, and I was absolutely fascinated at these machines. These giant multi-million dollar, 200-foot tall machines were actually in many cases run by little tiny 8-bit microcontrollers. I figured it would be some kind of supercomputer, or at least something on the lines of maybe a PC, but no. And even earlier ones I've even worked on were relay state machines. So in that job, I was taught how to read schematics and how to troubleshoot electronics, and it really kind of stoked the fire in me to begin learning. And around that same time, in 2007, 2008, was when Arduino came out. And again, that was another thing that just kind of fascinated me, and the stories that you tell about the Arduboy are very reminiscent to me about how I felt about Arduino in the beginning. The fact that you could just take this one thing and plug in a USB and you're ready to go. Before that, to me, the world of building electronics and everything was very, in the realm of corporates, you had to have a big programmer, you had to have this and that and all this, special knowledge and sign NDAs, but Arduino made it easy. And from that point on, I just started building, little projects, blinking LED, servo motors, a clock, a little robot. And every time I'd do that, I'd share a video on YouTube, and I'd get a big kick if maybe 10 or 12 views, and all my friends saw it. So I was pretty stoked. And I just did that for a few years, and eventually got around to the point where that was what I was sharing with people when people asked, like, what do I do? I wasn't starting with the day job that I had. I was like, look here, check. I would pull out my phone and show the YouTube videos. This is what I'm doing. And that kind of put me in a position where I was like, maybe there's a way I can actually build something that the thing that I build I can take out and take with me. And the concept of a digital business card, it came into my head, but I wasn't the first person to do this. This was existing online. It was a point in time in the social media or online media where they were asking if like business cards were even relevant anymore. So originally it started out as like a Simon Says on a circuit board where it just had 4 LEDs and 4 touchpads, follow the pattern. I had a project where I was trying to turn a toaster oven into a solder reflow oven to build circuit boards. And I had a OLED screen to display the graph, over time, the temperature. And I was reading the spec sheet and seeing how much power it took and ran it off of a coin cell, and it worked. And, okay, so we can put the OLED display, and we've got the controller, we got the battery. Now, we need a control scheme, so I figured, well, we need up, down, left, and right, of course, navigation, and then OK and cancel. And I did that in the schematic view at first, and it wasn't until I went to actually lay these components out that I realized there's kind of a solved paradigm in this user interface, and the Game Boy, I would say, is one of the ones that people most recognize, but really, game consoles in general. So I realized that this was something more than just the business card. It kind of created a life of its own. I took the portmanteau of Arduino and Game Boy and combined them together to do Arduboy. I could have done Game Bueno. I thought about Game Bueno. It turns out somebody else did and it launched their thing at almost the exact same time. But I put the video on YouTube. And it went viral.
Introducing Arduboy, a game system the size of a credit card. It's pre-installed with your favorite classic game and has an online library of over 20 more that you can download for free. With a brilliant OLED screen, 6 tactile buttons, a 2-channel piezo speaker, and even a blinky LED, everything that you need to learn to develop hardware is at your fingertips.
Thousands of people were emailing me, got covered by virtually every news media blog on the planet. It was incredibly overwhelming. And again, the story is quite more detailed and long than this, but the short version is I took on investment. I worked with Hacks, went to China. They have an incubator program over there where they take startups and get them all the resources they need to build what they need to build. Did the Kickstarter, and sort of the rest is history.
I love it when people ask me, can it do this or can it do that? Because ultimately the answer is yes.
Hey Kevin, how much is Arduboy gonna cost?
For the first 1,000 backers, $29.95.
That's cheap as f***.
And for everybody else, $39.
Still pretty cheap.
And we're gonna even offer education kits so we can get the Arduboy into classroom and teach kids how to program.
Arduino has revolutionized STEM education from the low-level microelectronics. It's made it extremely accessible. And you've taken it one step further by allowing video games to be accessible to those, including myself, who've never at that point worked on that stuff. How do you envision Arduboy itself kind of taking the Arduino mission and moving it forward just one step further to allow individuals to enjoy low-level programming?
This might sound like a little bit of a joke, but actually the feeling I have is that it's by accident, that somebody might buy this as a game system and not even know that can be developed with it, they can make and create with it. Now, a step on from that is that somebody who likes games and then is curious about that. But I have this saying that says if you want to encourage behavior, make it so easy that it happens by accident. And then your barriers to entry are like basically physically as low as possible. And so that was the concept, is how do I take something that is like a minimum viable platform? How do I remove the mistake of I've plugged the pins into the wrong thing, or this is shorted, or this is grounded, or I don't have the right resistor in there, or whatever. And so you get the opportunity to have the same experiences with Arduino, but you remove a lot of the bumps in the road, shall you say, and you focus. And that's what the Arduboy does, is it provides what I consider to be like just the right amount of focus to direct your imagination, and then allows you to, expand, and kind of the sky's the limit from there.
The idea of open source is everywhere when it comes to Arduboy, from the hardware platform all the way downstream to the software. How did you, as an individual, leverage open source to learn how to take a microcontroller and make it all the way down to a physical product that you can put in the market and enable others to learn with?
You know, if you would have asked me that question when I started, I wouldn't have had an answer. It was something that I had to learn by doing. And big props to Adafruit. I would say that's where maybe many of us have started. Adafruit, that's where I bought all the development boards, and that's what allowed me to get started, because every time I bought a board, on the website was the schematics and the board layout and tutorials and examples. It wasn't like here you go, here's the thing, and you're on your own, like read the data sheet, figure out the protocol. They had a library. It just worked. In fact, the original Arduboy ran off of a library, which is combining stuff that had been provided from Adafruit. We built from there. But the concept is that when you're not restricted from your curiosity, that you're able to use the availability of the resources, I think, is what is paramount in the open source community, because you never know what somebody's going to build with it. So you create the tools and you make those tools as accessible and easy as possible. And then at that point, it's just making sure that you support it, I think.
Adafruit is, it used to be one of my go-to source when I had time to program. And I remember very vividly how well documented they were able to make some of their libraries, including some tutorials. I want to take a giant step back and learn about you as a child, okay? Here it stands before me, Kevin, as an adult, as a successful entrepreneur. Talk to us about what it was like, Kevin, growing up. Did you always want to be an engineer, or was it something that you just kind of stumbled upon?
If you had asked me then, I would have said architect. That was actually the thing that for the longest amount of time, I would say up until
like a building architect?
My formative years. Yeah, building houses. I like the idea that an individual can influence the space in which you live. Like somebody's idea can change the relationships and the experiences that you have just because of the physical space has had consideration towards things. But no, like many other people, I've been fascinated by taking things apart and putting them back together. I was very apt to getting my hands. The first kind of project that I really got around to was building my own PC. Getting into PC gaming is really what started teaching me about being comfortable, getting my hands on circuit boards and electronics, and starting to overclock them, putting bigger heat sinks on them, adding LED lighting and things like that. From there, it was automotive. I got my first car, and I started expanding those same kinds of concepts, but to physical parts that make your car go faster and louder and all that. But when I started into, I did think I wanted to be an engineer. To answer your question, when I went to college, I started at Oregon State. I started into engineering, but it wasn't until that I completed about 2 years of the program that I realized I do enjoy making and building stuff, but I don't want to just figure out what's this angle supposed to be or what's the pressure in this situation. I want to make stuff at the higher level. Yeah, so you mentioned before about open source, and I think that's how I approach the company in general. My curiosity in learning about the hardware is as much about learning about how you actually produce and make the product, how logistics work, marketing and advertising. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis now. But it all started taking stuff apart, just general curiosity. And so that's what I tried to fuel back into the Arduboy. Is I try to imagine myself as a kid, as a young adult, and what would make me, excited to start following that same kind of path.
Open source continues to be a theme here. I do want to go back to the origins of the Arduboy. I mean, when I take this device and I hold it, it is extremely high quality. What was the process like going from concept to prototype to saying, okay, well, we know it needs to have aluminum back and have a product that people are going to be really excited about when they're holding it?
That was the real challenge, and that's actually what held me back for, I would say, a year or whatever. It went viral, and it wasn't until a year later that I had the Kickstarter ready to go, because I wasn't sure exactly how do you take this flimsy circuit board, which was okay for an individual, for me to take out and show people, but as a commercial product, there was no real way to construct this thing. So it was a crash course of what they call industrial design or industrial engineering. And it started with, just a lot of Google searches, a lot of YouTube videos, just kind of frantically searching around. I got to give big props to Bunny. He is the guy who hacked the original Xbox, and he's kind of famous in the hacker community. He has a blog where he shares a lot of this kind of design for manufacturer advice. He also wrote a book, and I read that cover to cover, multiple times, because it talks about all this stuff. There are people out there who have done this, and so I was kind of following along, and Bunny's a big one for me. And the other big step for me was taking that investment from Hacks, was joining the Hacks Accelerator, because I was at a point where I had used 3D printing, and I kind of had a case. I had the buttons figured out. I was far enough along where, all right, now I just kind of need to produce them. I need like a copy machine for physical products. What is that, And I got turned on to the Hacks, and they're like, here, you move to China, get an apartment, and basically live at the factory, and you'll figure it out. Really, the key, I got to say, the key thing was I spent so much time just trying to make it thin as possible. And that was probably where I got stuck on. I was really like, how do I, every last little millimeter. And it was a breakthrough moment. So I had the top plastic and the PCB, and I was trying to figure out, how do I bond those together, or how do I fit like a coin cell, because originally it was a coin cell powered, and then I was thinking coin cell has to be replaced all the time. And I was sitting across the table, and this is why these types of incubator co-working spaces, colleagues, friends, can be so invaluable to the development of these things, because it was an inspiration moment where I was kind of upset and like, I can't figure this out, what am I gonna do? And the guy across the table from me, he goes, does anybody really care if it's 2 millimeters thicker? Like, is anybody gonna know? You'll know, you will know, and it'll keep you up at night, but is anybody that gonna buy it gonna even think about it twice? And I was like, no. He's like, just put it in aluminum back and screws, you're done, you go home, And that was it, really. I was like, okay, stamp metal back, done. And a lot of people like identify it with the same kind of industrial design as the original iPod. It has that feel to it. I mean, it's inspired by a lot of different things, but I gotta say the actual reason that it looks the way that it does was just the easiest thing to do.
Funny that you mentioned the iPod, because I immediately realized that I actually have not the original, but the first gen iPod Photo behind me. And yeah, as soon as you said iPod, I'm like, holy shit, yeah, absolutely. I remember it does have a metal back, and it has that same high quality feel, though the Arduboy is clearly much smaller. This is something that, like, I gotta say, we keep talking about the Kickstarter, and the campaign itself went viral, like you said. You were able to meet your goals and take this product from idea to production. Tell us about the production of the video, because up until then, I remember seeing that circa 2015, and I thought to myself, man, this is extremely entertaining.
Sure, nerve-wracking, in a word. The concept, like, I was very proud and very ready to go with the product, and I was like, this is it. But then the video it's its whole other beast. Like, producing the video and is like a product in and of itself, and if that's not done correctly, then it's not going to allow the Arduboy, that we're selling, to reach its ultimate potential. So I felt a lot of pressure. The good news is a part of the Hacks program, they had a videographer who was available, and so I brought him on board. And the great thing was he was real passionate. He'd actually seen the Arduboy before I went in, and he had some ideas already. But the key is I wanted to communicate, I'm happy to hear that it was successful. The idea of it being fun, I didn't want to take it too seriously. I wanted people to understand what it was, not just by the description, but because of the theme of how the video was put together. Telling a story was a big important part of it. Like, it's not just presenting the product, but like how it got there, and a little bit about who I am. But yeah, the inspiration was the Dollar Shave Club video. That's the walking and talking and gags that I kind of ignore and just roll through. That was the big inspiration for me. And then the second half kind of like has like a documentary type feel to it. But no, I gotta say, it was about a week before I had to leave China and then launch the Kickstarter the following week. So I had like 2 weeks to go and hadn't done anything. So I just pulled an all-nighter and just wrote the script out, and we filmed. And the editing room floor was just littered because we cut so much. We probably cut more than half of what we actually filmed. There's entire sequences that aren't in the Kickstarter.
Oh, man.
And the way that I made those edits was if there was a scene in there that didn't make me laugh, I cut it. And that was the the method that I used to kind of create that punchy atmosphere. Was if it wasn't entertaining to me, it wasn't good enough. Like, it didn't add anything to it. So yeah, it was. I got to give a lot of credit to Anthony on that one, for doing the filming. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and in some ways, I wish that I had more opportunities to do that with a videographer crew. Like going around in China and having somebody to follow me around with a camera, it created a lot of opportunities. But when you have to hold the thing yourself and do it all yourself, like the recent Kickstarter,
right?
I had to adjust the expectations and realize that the goal of the most recent one was to be honesty. So maybe if the first one was excitement and interest and things like that, the goal of this most recent Kickstarter video was honesty, and I think I achieved that. So yeah, I've been really excited to see the results, and I'm happy to see that other people pick up on the message I was trying to get across.
The way you described that process leads me to believe that you had done film work before. Is that the case? Have you had done any video work before?
I mean, not like in any serious way, but I've been around photography. Yes, so still photography. I had a lot of experience. I've done that professionally for a number of years, and as part of that, there were some moving shots that I'd taken. But I would say in general, it's mostly just passion and curiosity towards the medium. I mean, I'm a huge film buff, and so knowing how films are directed and scripted and put together is something that was within my tool bag. But that was probably my first job, and doing something like that. I had a hope or dream in the back of my head that maybe somebody would see that. Hollywood would come calling. That was the bar. That was the bar that I set for that first video, was to impress somebody in Hollywood. And if 15xing my goal was actually where I ended up, then that's not so bad.
What was that feeling like? You have this idea, you work hard, you get to the point where you're like, hey, not only do I want to take this to my friends, but I now want to take this public. I would like to have public backing or community backing through Kickstarter. But going from like pressing submit to seeing it approved to the point where it goes viral, and then it goes past the pledge deadline, or whatever the marker is called. What was that feeling of success like? The goal, yes. What was the feeling of success like?
Overwhelming, and rewarding. Having gone through what I felt like it was a gauntlet in China, and living in a foreign country, learning a foreign language, all with the express goal of making this happen, was like, kind of like this relief type moment. But that lasted 5 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that. Like, when it hit the goal, I was in San Francisco. I was about to do a pitch, or had just finished one, and I went to a bar and just had a cocktail, a little celebratory moment, and kind of like for myself, just kind of had a little moment for myself. I shared the picture on the Kickstarter. People got a big kick out of that. But beyond that point, it was like, all right, man, here we go. It's time to get to work. The thing that I would say about other than that was that it was like confirmation. I'd been put on this path by a few people, one of which was my father, inspiring me to believe that there's other people out there who want to learn about education as myself. And so I would say that was the real exciting thing for me, was to kind of in front of my friends and family, to show them that I'd done the thing that I said that I wanted to do.
Truth be told, the Arduboy is part of my own professional growth story. Mm-hmm. When we got our first Arduboys, I remember thinking, holy smokes, I need to learn lower level C to really take advantage of this platform and get the most out of it. Now, learning ARM assembly wasn't something that I was really well suited for, but getting the opportunity to work on something as low level as C was extremely rewarding. Have you had anybody contact you in regards to using the platform to learn compiled languages, and has that helped them in their career? I
mean, that's been the most excellent, rewarding. I mean, I say the word rewarding, but like it's been what has fueled my continued passion for working on this platform, on working with Arduboy. I thought it would maybe be a year or two after the original hype died down, but the fact that it's had this sustained presence in the community demonstrates that there is that value there. And I have, dozens of emails from people who say, I bought the Arduboy, or I received it as a gift, and I learned how to code, and I showed the game at like a Christmas party, and then I got introduced to this game. Now I have a job as a game developer, and it's been my lifelong dream. And there's been a number of stories like that, and I see it. I bring attention to in the most recent Kickstarter video that it's being used in schools, around the world, universities. Like University of Central Florida ran an entire several day long class with the Arduboy, and it's blown me away. It was kind of always in my wildest dreams that would happen, and to see it occur organically. I don't have a sales team that's going around to these schools trying to push it to them. This is something these teachers, these educators have found themselves and found value in, and that's again why I keep moving forward, is like, how do I now support them and the work that they've done to build upon that? Because the teachers have built curriculums, they've built tutorials, and so if we can take that again and grow the entire community, grow the platform more, it's all the better. I think that's the real value of what Arduboy is that it gives you the opportunity to grow beyond yourself. If you there's a line that I used to tagline for Arduboy is the game system the size of your imagination, and that's kind of a way that I truly feel about it.
That actually, I've never heard that before, dude, but that is completely apropos to everything we're talking about as far as
maybe I should bring it back.
I think you should, dude. In fact, it probably, I think it actually makes sense relative to the Arduboy Mini, which we'll talk about in a little bit in your latest Kickstarter. But I do want to open up a little bit and just share with you my own pride and joy working with the platform. To my left, this LCD screen, let's see over here, is actually our very first video game on the Arduboy running on the Raspberry Pi, but I would not have been able to paint this RGB screen had I not learned how to program on the Arduboy. And then to my right is the second video game we developed, which was a successor to the first video game. And so I proudly show the software to our viewers because the Arduboy itself is rooted in my own professional development history. You mentioned your dad being a mentor to you. What was that feeling like when you released the Kickstarter and you finally circled back with him and say, "Dad, I did it"? What was his reaction?
He was proud. He was not surprised. He knew I could do it. He believed in me all along.
That's fantastic, dude. I couldn't imagine the sense of pride your dad had seeing you succeed. The Arduboy community is quite a magical place. Having been a contributor and a consumer of information, how do you keep the Arduboy community thriving? Because they've developed many iterations of the core library, and from my understanding has been somewhat pivotal to the success. So talk to us about what the Arduboy community has done to help the success of the Arduboy.
Everything. I mean, if it was only me, then I don't really feel like Arduboy would be anything at all. I mean, all the games have come from the community, as you mentioned, the library. Yeah, I mean, the community is everything, and it's without, it's like you can have it's like a dance club, whatever, some event. If nobody shows up, great. If the music's good, nobody's there to listen to it, kind of a thing. It's the key to keeping it growing is to, in my mind, to support and to promote and to empower the community as much as possible, is give back to them. So when they produce something, I'm always trying my best. How can I put that on the front page of the website, or how can I tweet that out or share it on social media? I like to run game jams on there as an opportunity to allow the developers to compete against each other, show their skills, and then there's rewards. They can win prizes from that. Many cases, the notoriety of just completing in that game jam is mostly what they're interested in. And then beyond that, I think, is representing the company, representing the brand in a way that allows them to feel like they're involved. Like, even though it's just me running the company now, it's most cases a royal we. I use the term we a lot when I run the business. And part of it's to give the impression that it's maybe a little bigger than it is for people who might not know. But it in a very practical sense, when I use the word we, every time I type it out, in my mind, I think of the community. I think that the people who are out there, they're reading it. And if they know me well enough, they know that that's why I'm using it. And so when they see the we, they feel like they're included.
The royal we makes a ton of sense. And I can't help but think of the word passion when it comes to the Arduboy community, and some of the community members who are not only just passionate about the community, but they're just so knowledgeable when it comes to low-level electronics and computer science. What is it like when you see the development of certain games? Because I know I've felt it when we went from a 2D side-scrolling game to a 2.5 space simulator with like a full soundtrack, and then seeing like someone recreate Star Fox on the platform. What is it like for you as a creator to see the types of things that people have created with this platform that has such minimalistic features?
I mean, I love it. It's the fuel that keeps me going. In a lot of cases, I never had any belief that it could do these things. Like, I remember the speed of performance, what I was getting when I first launched the Arduboy. It was using software serial for the display, and there was no graphical optimization whatsoever. And now there's, the graphics driver is it's written in inline assembly. The developers, the community members have gone through and cycle counted the microcontroller. So literally each individual operation of the microcontroller has been optimized to perform at its best. And really, when I see a new game come out, it's like I want to shout from the mountaintops, because I see it and I enjoy it and it's cool. It makes me feel good. But again, it's back to what I was saying before. It's like, how do I support that community? And I want to show all these other people. And in some respects, I feel like I'm never able to do that enough. I mean, and I feel like, I got a decent following on social media, a few thousand followers, which is great. But I think the whole world needs to know that there is this new, this new game for the Arduboy. Somebody just recently recreated the trading card game from the Final Fantasy series in there. And it was hilarious to me because I didn't read the post before playing it. I just saw there was a new game. I downloaded it, started playing it, and I'm like, this kind of feels like the Final Fantasy game. And then I read it and I'm like, boom. So yeah, those kind of experiences are great. To share those with other people and allow them to have the same thing is fascinating. It's over 300 games that have been developed for the Arduboy. I thought a few dozen would kind of be the peak. I thought this would last for a few years. Mm-hmm. And to see it expand from there, and now people can even develop and create these games without the Arduboy. I mean, we have an online emulator where people are able to just go to the website and start coding, and they can create it all on the web. So the platform itself is expanded beyond just the hardware.
The expanded, I do want to take that and extrapolate on that term. The Arduboy community itself is a global community. I can recall learning about programming and getting involved in the community in 2017, but also recognizing that there were people still like myself discovering about the platform, but posting on Twitter and tagging Arduboy in various languages. How does that make you feel, recognizing that it's not just here in America that you're enabling other people and empowering other people to learn, but it's truly a global phenomenon?
That's where I am extremely lucky about when it first went viral, when I pushed the first YouTube video back in 2014, was that by virtue of the internet and the fact that the product or the concept was interesting itself, it had a global reach. Had I just launched a Kickstarter on its own without having it being already, the brand awareness basically being blasted all over, because when it was the first viral thing that had been covered in when I say virtually every news media, it was I had statistics that there's a term called impressions in social media, and that means that basically it showed up on someone's screen. Now, whether they interacted with it and paid attention to it, but theoretically over 1 billion impressions for the first Arduboy, and that's what started that an international thing, because then when I launched the Kickstarter, there were people all around the world who were already aware of it, already kind of following it, and grew that. In addition to that, I put a lot of effort into visiting maker fairs all around the world. So after launching the Kickstarter, I went on basically 2 world tours where I went to every major maker fair I went to the Bay Area one, New York, I was in Berlin, Thailand, and in Bangkok. We went to Tokyo, Hong Kong, there's Rome, Italy. There's a few more that I'm forgetting. And every time I did that, I would see, watch the statistics, and there'd this big kick because, people went and either bought them or they saw it and told their friends. And I think the other side of it is the fact that, we don't really do any real major advertising or marketing. It's almost entirely word of mouth as far as how it gets around.
Right.
And so once someone in one of those countries gets it, there's a very high likelihood. There's basically 100% chance that they're going to tell at least one other person about it. And so you'll see these kind of growth things in these different regions. But the other side of it is I do try to, as much as possible, engage with those other members of the community. In the very beginning, we had a ton of Japanese users, and we still actually have, a large percentage of them. And because of the language barrier there's a lot of Japanese people who don't speak any English, and the online translators don't work very well for Japanese English back and forth. So we have a Japanese section in the community. I mean, we of course welcome that for other languages, but it hasn't been necessary. And those are the kinds of, and it was that conversation. We had that open conversation with members of the Japanese community, and I mean, I love it. The knowledge that anywhere in the world that there's a likelihood there's somebody within, walking distance that may have an Arduboy or be familiar with it is great. And I want to do more of that. Like how can I capture that and build on that, expand on that, and bring more. Because in my mind, it's all kind of like a positive thing. If there's a way to have these enable people around the world to interact with each other and realize that we're not all that different,
Right.
as far as what it is that makes us feel good. The idea of accomplishing a goal and learning and making and creating is sort of a universal experience for people all around the world.
You mentioned having a large user base in Japan. In 2017, some of our clients were in Japan. One of them was Uniqlo. And I recall sending a few units to our folks over there. And they sent photos back. It was the only client that sent. They were so excited to receive it that they sent photos of them enjoying the game that we developed on the system from the office. I thought that was extremely heartwarming. The idea that the Arduboy library is open source is one component that has helped people like myself learn about lower level programming. The other component is that the schematic for Arduboy itself is completely open sourced, to the point where I was able to work on making a bigger version of the screen for the Arduboy in my own home laboratory. What has it been like for you, the creator of this device, to see other people make mods or their own homegrown version of the Arduboy using your open source schematic?
That's what I thought was actually going to be the goal from the beginning. Before I decided to turn it into a business, that was where I started. I was like, I'm just going to open source this and people can just kind of go crazy. But there was enough people be like, no, we don't want to make it. You make it. So that opportunity, that platform, that dimension of it has really been at the forefront of how I've always viewed the platform. But it's great. I mean, the homemade section, we have a section of the community for people who've done that, is now over 100 posts. So there's more than 100 people who've even posted about it. And there's tons of people who've never even shared about it online. That's more exciting to me, honestly, than, it's always nice when somebody buys the product. But I would say, as far as existential or, like higher level thinking. I think that when somebody goes and they don't buy it, they build it themselves, is in some degree even more engagement, because it's very easy to click a buy now button.
Right.
It's not as easy to look through the website. What parts do I need to buy? How do I put this together? So the engagement with the brand is dramatically higher if they've built it themselves. So that's always great to see. It's again how I try to bring it full circle. If the development from the community is fascinating enough, is valuable enough, I'll build it into the product. And that's how we got the Arduboy FX. We had a member of the community who created a bootloader which allowed games to be flashed without a PC from an external memory chip. And so originally I said, okay, let's build a mod chip. Mm-hmm. Let's make this official, and I'll make it real easy, go to a flex PCB. But there were so many people who were interested in it that I was actually just able to do another round of production. And go figure, once there's 300 games on board and you don't need a PC, kind of back to what we mentioned before about expanding the reach, getting people who might not be interested in coding to begin with to be interested in it. Now that it has all these games, somebody might get it just to play the games, and totally happy with that. And to see that that's how the platform is extended from in the very beginning, where people would be skeptical that these games are even going to be games for it, to going to having a catalog of more than 300 games. And I can make silly little jokes like we have like infinitely more platform exclusives than like even the PlayStation 5, so it's wild, it's crazy. And again, I'll always look for opportunities to elevate the members of the community, to show it off, and then most recent Kickstarter is kind of like the culmination of that activity.
The community itself has been around for over 7 years. Have there been any challenges sustaining it or growing it?
Yeah, I mean, as always, the key is to stay with it. And there was a period and during the pandemic where people kind of like went off on, had their own little lives, or maybe spending times with their families, or wondering, what they're going to do with their lives, or typical pandemic type stuff. But I think the thing that really drives the cohesiveness of the community, drives the activity there, is two things. Number one is having a game jam, and that always brings people in. And the other thing is having a sale, a new product, having something that the users of the community feel are going to bring in new users. That's what's always an exciting time within the community, is when we have an influx of new users come in, and that's what it always. The old users come back. So if they see new people posting, new games coming in, other people will see, oh, this thread got updated. And I mean, I've seen that you did the same thing. Like, you came back in and you were fascinated to see, oh, wow, look at all this development that's occurred while I've been away. And again, that's where I see as my job, is to be sort of like the cheerleader, the promoter of the community, of the work that they've done, and elevate that using my social media platform to show off the awesome work that the members of the community have done. It's not a walk in the park. I would say that I never thought it was going to last this long. At this point, I'm trying to think about how do I expand or truly open source what is happening with the community, so that it necessarily doesn't even need to rely on the hardware as much, that the platform itself, like with the emulator, maybe potentially with like apps for the mobile systems and things like that, that this concept of taking a thing that is self-contained, that inspires you to learn, has everything that you need to get started as like a singular point of entry, and trying to apply that to maybe other mediums and things like that. And the excitement is how can I present that in such a way that the members of the community will support it. And there's I would say a contingent of a few hundred people, I would say, that kind of would follow me along to do whatever it is that I do, and that's a great feeling. But at the same time, I see it as a huge responsibility as well.
Yeah, you mentioned me returning, and I had not worked on anything Arduboy since about 2018. And the story that Kevin's describing is I was tagged on something going on with the latest Arduboy library, in addition to the FX chip. And essentially, both of the games that we had developed were using like certain sectors of storage that were supposed to be like sacred spaces not to write into, and we had no idea at the time. The second game we developed had stretched the Arduboy itself from a space perspective that we had to remove some of the core functionality so that we could have crazy features like four-channel polyphony from a synthesizer perspective. We worked with a very, very well-experienced, intelligent individual by the name of Delo Brignoli, who took Team ARG's synthesizer and made it like so much more feature-rich that I don't know if there's been a game since then that has had an entire soundtrack devoted to it. Have you seen that yet?
It's each kind of developer adds their own little spices to what is the like the real like standout feature of that game, whether it's the graphics, the sound, the gameplay, the mechanics, even the like the code golf aspect of it. We ran a game jam where the point of the game jam was to make it as like a small file as possible. So that's kind of back to the idea of it being like a global community. It adds so much diversity to the community, so many different dimensions that it's just like a vibrant, exciting place to be, and to represent that as something that I'm a part of is very rewarding. Makes me proud.
The community has such an affinity towards you. But also to each other. There are names like Mr. Blinky for rap. Like, there's so many people who are, they seem to contribute outside of their normal day jobs. And the idea that they're so passionate to do so is, I think, makes part of the Arduboy itself a very special thing. They're so welcoming. I would like to switch gears to the latest Kickstarter. So talk to us about this new venture. What does the Arduboy itself devolve into?
The Arduboy Mini.
Oh.
It's a 8-bit game system, takes the same stuff that's on the Arduboy FX, but it removes the case, the battery, the speaker. But the idea is by doing that, it makes it easier to produce in smaller batches. So if I want to produce some for a school, if the school's like, hey, I want 30 of these, 50 of these, or whatever, it can be priced at a range that is accessible to them, and I don't have to spin up another batch of 1,000 units or whatever and work out the minimum quantities of this and that and the other thing. So the reason I made it was, again, just for myself. I was goofing around during the pandemic and was like, kind of, how small can I make this and still actually make it like functional? I tried like a nano Arduboy, which was like even like it was like the size of your thumbnail, and obviously that's too small. But this one works, and it was fun, and a lot of people responded to it. And I thought, okay, this is the opportunity to kind of continue the mission, continue the thread, the story that the community has built. Of they're building it themselves. So this is kind of like my homemade version of the Arduboy, and I figured the Kickstarter was going to be a great platform to throw it up to. That way, I didn't need to worry too much about, again, I talked about minimum order quantities is always a huge challenge in production. So to have what are effectively like kind of pre-orders or, established intent where people were like, yeah, sure, I'm ready to go on this, allows me to plan and produce it at a higher quality level. And we were able to hit our goal in under 13 hours, which is really exciting. And now we're trying to hit the stretch goal of 30,000 so that we can do some custom color PCBs.
If I totally understand this properly, the Arduboy Mini comes from the Arduboy FX. It's smaller. I'm about to get really nerdy with you. I just had a wild hair idea. So learning about low-level consoles dating all the way back to the Atari VCS, the 2600, has been a passion of mine. And I've been grateful to publications like MIT Press with, I think it's Racing the Beam that they produced, and I Am Error. I actually have a physical copy there. And those older systems had, very much like the original Arduboy, certain addressable space that the architecture could reach, but they were extended at some point using what's now known as a mapper chip. Do you think it's possible to architect software with the current Arduboy and the latest storage that's been added with the FX bit so that you could actually build a much larger game and make it mappable or something like that? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, there's a few people in the community right now which are like spearheading that. It's not the easiest thing to do, but again, expanding the challenge. The I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I talked about it. Actually, I've talked about it a few times in the community. We're looking at running a game jam soon, where that will be the goal of the game jam. Will be like use the Arduboy FX storage within your game to expand the gameplay. So yeah, the capability's there. And with 16 megabytes, actually, you can fit all 300 games, and it still is only 8 megabytes is about all of the Arduboy games. So you've got another, I mean, even if you use another meg or two per game, you know, you can fit like 16 like expanded games.
Oh my
now,
gosh.
I'll tell you, I'll hang my hat up if I can see someone develop a game that like uses the whole, you know, has like full motion videos and you know, like now with the expanded memory, the capacity for somebody to build like a full role-playing game that has, you know, multiple characters, story elements, things that change in their story, it's all there. And so yeah, we're going to be talking about having a game jam soon. There's a few details that we got to work out, but that'll be announced during the course of this Kickstarter.
Oh, that is super exciting. And as soon as I saw your Kickstarter on your latest Kickstarter on Twitter, I absolutely had to back it. It was nice to see that it was less than 24 hours you were able to meet your goal. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was about 13 hours. I was mad tweeting out. I was like, come on, guys, we can hit the goal.
Remarkable. And I also saw other community members joining in on the fun. Again, to go down the nerdy path, when working on our second video game, it was important for me for the game itself to have a soundtrack. And if you study the actual music from the first level all the way down to the final level, and eventually you kind of wrap around with, you know, much more difficulty, the number of notes per song progressively gets smaller and smaller as we got to a point where we realized that we could only cram so much space in. So when you're talking about 16 megs, where we only had, what was it, 2.5K?
32 kilobytes of flash and then 2.5K of RAM.
RAM, right. So with 32 kilobytes of flash, you only, I think there was only so much you can use because the Arduboy library itself.
Yeah, you can only really use about 24, 26 or something like that, yeah.
Oh yeah, we got to the point where we had to hard reboot every time because we had to
take the
overwrite
USB stack out. Yeah.
Yep, and that was the only saving grace to finish the game, and I know that's that rubbed quite a few people the wrong way. But man, it was such an awesome experience, like using those constraints of the system to develop something that at that point hadn't been done. And it furthers my love for the community. I do want to jump to the community questions itself.
Sure.
The first question, right off the bat, why is it that the Arduboy itself has been out of stock so much?
Yeah, basically, that's what I'm doing the new Kickstarter for, is to like sort of address that. It's difficult to keep them in stock because demand is it's basically demand stays higher than the supply. And now, if you know, I had endless amounts of capital where I could just go in and be like, sure, I'm gonna take my life savings and buy 10,000 Arduboys and just like keep them in inventory and just like fingers crossed that they'll sell fast enough that I can, you know, afford to eat. It hasn't been a position I've been ready to be in, and so it's always been a situation of trying to gauge the demand that's, you know, like 6 months ahead and try to plan for that. And more or less, never able to fulfill that. Every time I do a round of production, almost it's to fulfill you know, pre-orders or like you know, extra orders that came in during the last batch. So it's something that I hope to solve in the future. Again, like the first step is to take the Arduboy Mini, is something that theoretically can be produced, you know, ad hoc, and then yeah, trying to maybe get some partners, try to see how we can take this, what I've built now, and try to make it something that can be expanded to something that can be in stock in a store near you, kind of like a situation. Oh
my God, I think that would be dope to see something like this at Target or like a Walmart or something.
Actually, I met with Target. I went to the Target headquarters and I met with their buyers, and they were like, you know, we got a new STEM section. We think this could work. When you're ready to sell 10,000, 100,000 units, just give us a call. And I turned them down. believe it or not. The reason is because in order to go into retail, you, again, with that risk, I would have to buy all those units.
Right.
You put them in the store. You have to pay for display units. Target has 1,500 stores. Display units cost about $1,000 each. So you're already talking tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're not even going to get back just from the display. So I wasn't ready at that time to think that, okay, I'm going to put this out there. It's going to be a winning product. And basically I did the math. If anything more than 10% of people would return it, whether they bought it, they didn't like it, they didn't know what it was, couldn't reprogramming it, company would have gone bankrupt. And so I took the decision to say, look, I'm going to keep this kind of a niche product to shelter it, to protect it, to allow it to grow. And I think now that we have the Arduboy FX, that it's got, the 300 games on there, it's had multiple, almost a decade of people who have used it and learned and grown alongside it. I think there's a strong case to see what kind of a consumer product this could kind of fit into. I think as its current state, maybe a little bit too niche, nerdy, geeky, but again, this concept of something that can expand beyond just a game system to be something that can be learned on is something that I really want to focus on moving forward.
I just heard you say something that causes me to want to break out of this community question section just for a moment.
Sure.
You mentioned being protective about the community and being protective about the product. Would it be safe to say that you put love into this product?
Oh yeah, man, of course. We always talk about love and stuff in the community and things like that. And we say passion, which I think is in many ways is an analog for that. And I think that's what love is it's passion plus caring. Like passion on its own is you can you can be passionate about anything, but if you don't take the time to care and put in the work, then it's not love. And so that's, I think, apropos description of how I feel about it.
I just had to call that out because I think that again is part of what makes not just the product special, but the community special itself. And you rarely hear people in technology using that word.
Yeah, I mean, now go down deep into it, but I mean, love is a delicate thing. It's something that people are nervous to get into, right? So they're saying, well, you can get your heart broken, right?
Right.
But it's definitely true what you said about not existing in the industry. So many people, it's just like a day job, and they're like, yeah, push the paper, get to Friday, whatever it takes. I remember meeting Andrew from Gizmodo when I went to CES in 2015. And I jumped over the counter and gave him a giant bear hug, almost knocked him over. And he was like, "Man, I wish other people in the industry had the same kind of passion, love as you do for what you're doing. It would make my job so much more satisfying." And let's do more of that. I'm all on board for that. And I think that the more the world is, that's like the Gandhi quote, right? So be the change that you want to see in the world. And so I want to see more products that people are passionate about, that care about, that aren't just purely put out for the purpose of creating profit. If profit was what I wanted to go after, there's a number of other things I could be doing with my life right now that would generate way more money for me, but none that would be this rewarding, that would have this, at least immediately right now, would have this kind of positive impact on the world. And the inspiration that I've taken and from myself and amplified and given to other people, and that infectious kind of feeling of how I felt is now inside of other people, and they feel the same way or similar. And that's priceless. That truly is priceless.
I completely agree, and I think that's part of what makes some of the Arduboy community members come back so many years later. So going back to the community questions, Filmote has a very special one that is completely in alignment with this. 7 years later, what do you think makes the Arduboy itself still so popular?
I mean, the fact that it'd be so much different than anything else out there. The fact that it's not designed to, take your details. Like it's not designed to, scrape your social media or, like microtransactions or anything else like that. That the product in and of itself is like intrinsically interesting, and that it offers a gateway, a pathway, an entrance into this community, into this environment where you can now, like you're part of a party. And I think that's why Arduboy, has that kind of staying power, is that it's like a ticket. You buy the Arduboy, it's like a ticket into this whole other world, and that world, it can be, again, like as big as your imagination, and it can take you beyond the Arduboy. Like you buy the Arduboy, and it starts you on this path that can kind of go as far as you want to take it. And I think that it's been around long enough, and as I mentioned before, using word of mouth, that's something enough people have talked about, posted online, that's kind of a given. Like people don't challenge that people understand that it is one of the best ways to like learn and how to program games, or like just enjoy kind of like real classic, true to form 8-bit gaming.
Aston actually has 2 questions back to back. I'm going to give you one at a time. What aspect of the Arduboy itself gives you the most sense of personal pride and joy, or reward?
I mean, like you mentioned before, seeing that it's all around the world, I think is a big kick for me. There's been a number of times where I've been in different cities around the world. I can think of one example where I was in Paris, and I happened to be there with a friend of mine, and I just Googled it. It was just, hey, you know what? And I Googled Arduboy, and there was a store like walking distance that had it in stock on the shelf. Now it was like kind of like a niche, like electronics, like how they had synthesizers and things like that. But to be in a foreign country, and the same thing kind of happened in Japan, and to be able to be in a foreign country and just like walk into a store and be like, I made that. That's probably the biggest kick personally that I've got out of it.
This one actually is going to ask you to look deep back. This is something that I've been working on when it comes to my own work sessions with therapy. If you could rewind back to the very beginning of the Arduboy journey and the inception of the project, what advice would you give to the young Kevin at that time?
There's 2 things. One is actually it's a quote that I heard from Patrick Stewart. He was being interviewed, and asked the same question. Like, what would you tell your younger self? And to relax. Is just relax. Like, it's going to be fine, and if it isn't, then not being relaxed isn't going to help. Actually, it's another quote from Bill Murray that dovetails into that one, is that Bill Murray says that there's no reason to not be relaxed. You do your best work when you're relaxed, and so if you are stressed out, you're going to screw something up. So just chill out and be confident that that's where you'll produce your best work. Now, that that would have been good advice. The second thing would be to launch like immediately. I was just telling my friend the other day that if I would have launched the Kickstarter when it went viral originally in 2014, and still waiting a year and trying to like get follow-up coverage and things like that, again, hindsight's 2020, because I know I was able to pull it off, and I was able to manufacture them and deliver them and things like that. But I had no idea. I had zero confidence at the beginning that I would be able to do that, and I didn't want to overpromise and have a bunch of people thinking I was stealing their money. So yeah, those would be the 2 advice. I think relax applies to pretty much anybody, but the ship immediately really was that's the true time travel one. You can't make that call at that time, but if I could, then that's what I would say. And
so I get the sense that for the viewers, Kevin and I have never physically been in the same space, so we've never really met, but I get the sense that we're actually very similar. I'm constantly toying with very different things, open source projects, learning new things. Do you have anything outside the world of the Arduboy Mini that you're working with, and can you give us a preview?
Yeah, let me see what I got on the desk over here. This is something that I'm working on here. I mean, that probably looks familiar to it because
is it a Game Boy Advance?
Yeah, it is. So what this is it's a Game Boy Advance, but it's got a Raspberry Pi RP2040 in it, and it has it's supposed to initialize the SD card and show some images, but apparently I've got some bug in my code or whatever. But this is a PCB that you'd take and you'd use to replace the Oh, I think it's out of battery. It just had enough to start up. But what it does is you can replace the PCB inside of Arduboy SP and use the same screen that is in the Playdate. And the idea is that can be a new console that has more memory, more capability, and I'm really throwing what I like to say like the kitchen sink at it, where the Arduboy was like a minimum viable platform. This one, because I've got a little bit more space, like already we've got, like I mentioned, the SD card, there's a headphone jack, it has the capability of having a microphone on it, I2C port, and even it's got an M.2 expansion port in here. And so SparkFun has developed a standard where you can create your own little M.2 to have like a coprocessor. So it's got the Raspberry Pi RP2040 in it, but you could add ESP32, you could add a Teensy to it, anything that they're producing, or you could produce your own circuit board. So this one, the idea is that it's a modular version sort of the Arduboy, and to expand on it further, to like be able to have like different display modules. So this is the transflective display. It's a 240 by 400 display. It could also be potentially put an OLED display in there, or an LCD. The capability even is to use the original Arduboy display. You'd need like a translator chip in there. But this one, in my mind, is more fun. I don't actually necessarily intend on this being a full product. This one might just be kind of like I'll just sell a circuit board and see how it goes. But for fun, for me to kind of toy around and see what is possible. And I think that once I kind of complete this project, it will give me some focus, give me some understanding of kind of how I want to, move forward on a next product or things like that. I'm also interested in music. Actually, that's one of the things I've teased or talked about over the years, is doing a product which is much like the Arduboy, but basically a synthesizer. So you might have like a little piano keyboard, and instead of teaching you how to code necessarily, it's teaching you how to play music, like music theory, like what are fifths, thirds, sevenths, time signatures and things like that. In addition to allowing you to then dive into the analog digital synthesis of creating the music on the software side. So this idea of having a physical object, a mote, it's like a statue or something that you can identify a bigger concept with, but it solidifies and focuses that thought. That's what I think Arduboy, the magic of Arduboy is, and how to take that into the next decade is kind of what I'm focusing on right now.
It feels like Arduboy itself is growing outside of just being a product and more of a brand. Would you say that be the case?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to see what has worked. Like it's not just this credit card sized console. There's something bigger that I've touched on. I have like a silly little saying. I do a little bit of like business advising kind of thing, and I like to say that a company isn't really a company until they've done two things. This is number one, that they've learned something, that they've as a company, not like as an individual, but they've executed their mission statement, and along that way they've had a learning, a foundational learning that they wouldn't have got any other way, and in fact potentially nobody else has, because nobody else has done that. So that's number one. Number two is getting sued. I haven't done number two yet. I've come close a number of times, but that's when I'll know I'm on the right track, is when somebody else says, hey, you're going over the line, you're stepping over the line. And I think in today's world, now I'm being facetious, but to some degree it is real true. You're not, what do they say? It's like you're not moving, if you're not breaking anything, you're not moving fast enough.
Getting sued part, I was not expecting that. I was thinking more about innovation, but I think you're tying that in quite well. Kevin, it looks like we're at time, dude. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to connect with us and sharing your origin story and how you developed the Arduboy. I look forward to getting my own versions of the Arduboy mod chip, FX mod chip, which I ordered a few of, as well as the Arduboy Mini. And I look forward. I believe that no matter what you do, you're going to be successful, and I appreciate everything.
Oh, of course. No, I mean, I owe a lot of thanks to you, Jay, because you and through Motors Create have been a foundational part of Arduboy. Actually, there's a number of times where you placed large orders, like you mentioned, the promotional to send to your customers and things like that. And those came at pivotal times. I can pretty confidently say that without, your support, Arduboy probably wouldn't still be here. So
Oh, my.
thank you.
My pleasure, dude. You have a fantastic product, a great mindset, and like you mentioned, an amazing army. I'm using my term here, an amazing army of community team members to help support you along the way.
I certainly feel blessed. Thank you, Jay.